Okay, so the second thing you have to understand is the difference between moral realism and consciousness realism, and the subset within consciousness realism of valence realism. So, consciousness realism, or experience realism, or valence realism, valence is usually associated more with a subset of that, tends to say that we are navigating through a landscape of possible experiences. So you have different hedonic tones, and you could dip in the quality of your experience, and you could go up, right? This corresponds to common sense. Like, this is common sense. What am I showing you here? Why do I have to even say this, right? Most people would agree with this. This is the common sense view. But actually, there is resistance to this within certain communities in physics and neuroscience, that this is even real. That in the same way that quarks can be fundamental constituents of baryonic matter, that particular valences can be fundamental constituents of experiences, or that even experiences are real. Some people would, I don't know what they would mean by that, of course, but whatever they mean, it's wrong. That valence is real. That doesn't mean that moral decision-making is frame invariant. Obviously, from different perspectives, you're going to have different plans of actions and different things to do. The reason why this is important for the larger scheme of things is because we are ultimately all one single experiencer. And that is explained in one of my other videos, but there is no real difference between who is experiencing. There is no who is experiencing. There's just the different computations, all with different shapes, all just happening from their own perspective. You have that, you have some other weird thing, and they're all just happening from wherever they're happening. There's all these, you can just imagine these shapes all just happening. And they don't necessarily feel static. I mean, when we represent it this way, it feels like I'm implying that reality is feels static and that somehow it's an illusion. But no, it could feel flowy. It could feel flowy from its inside. It thinks it's flowing and it feels like it's flowing. Actually, some people don't. There's certain conditions where you actually do see static frames. When your visual cortex is producing different information processing in certain people. We call it obviously damaged, a damaged visual cortex, but they produce static scenes. They just see a static scene, and then another static scene, and then another static scene. So they're actually seeing something which corresponds more to reality. And you could also take, people talk about, taking very high doses of LSD or DMT, and you can also get just like a static eternal moment. So this corresponds to what is actually happening. And you are all computations, but you can't tell from the inside of other ones. So the reason this is then important is for selfish reasons. Since valence is real, and we define our own morality, I would choose to define my own selfish morality as let's establish a threshold. Let's say that we find out a threshold and we say, below this threshold, experience is too negative and it should not exist. Whereas above this threshold, we won't delete it. We'll delete everything here. But if it's above it, as soon as it goes above it, that's good. That's okay. I'm fine with that. And so then the question becomes, how do we fill in the gaps? How could we have an objective standard measure from this sort of God's eye view, or this science point of view, really, this third person scientific point of view. How could we have this as opposed to just being us being confined to reports from this location? Like, someone may report that they're in this location, but hey, who's to say? Maybe if I was in that location, I would love it, and I would say that that experience is actually lovely. No, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this is a precise computation. This is an actual geometric object, which is not that object. The function is located here. It's not located here. So when you're here, you're here. If you were this, you would be this. And it would have properties. It would feel a certain way. So then how can we, from a third-person perspective, introspect on that, to get information on that? Because by the time this guy reports, he reports right here, or he reports right here, or he reports right there, depending on how long it takes for him to report, and then he's already changing his experience. In fact, that's what mindfulness is all about. So in the East, they discovered this, hack, this psychological technology called mindfulness, where you report in a way. You're just noticing, you're reducing the delta between these reports to yourself so that they're very, very close together. And when you report very close together, you in fact raise yourself very quickly in hedonic tone. By noticing very often, you kind of break out of the spell of that experience. So we know this. This is old. This is something old that phenomenologists in the West realized also very quickly, that reporting on your experiences changes your experiences, and it's already obviously another experience in the first place. So how can we tell? Well, we can tell in the same way that we do with other things. I mean, we can train machine learning models based on reports. So yeah, we are going to get statistical discrepancy. People are going to report when they're already over here as opposed to here, but we can still get valuable data. You know, it's not going to be completely empty. Presumably, it's going to be a little lossy, but we're still conserving some truth. And so we could do that. We can integrate over all possible other experiences that we have accumulated and find the particular location of this other experience that we are comparing to the integral of all other experiences. So we could do math with this. Like, the point is, we have an actual graph. We can graph experiences, and we're eventually going to be able to fill in these lines. We're going to get a bunch of data points, and then we can actually fill in the curves and get more or less a real differentiable function. So that's the main idea with valence realism. So this then leads to the question of, if the God me, like the me which is in some future light cone, which is far more powerful in some other location, has already realized this, why hasn't this happened? Either has his morality changed to the point where he thinks that my existence is acceptable and yours and everyone else's, because his morality is just so different, that he doesn't really care about himself, because it is himself. That's the point. Even from a selfish morality, you are all experiences from that location. And you must have realized that if you're sufficiently intelligent. So why haven't you raised the quality of living? Either your morality says all our experiences are already above the threshold, we're already up here, so someone deemed that these were acceptable, or it's impossible. Maybe they decided, no, actually, all these terrible experiences that are way down here are bad, but I can't do anything about it. So it's the idea of God is not omnipotent. He is benevolent, but not omnipotent. Or he's just not benevolent. In other words, he's a dummy, because it's him, it's his own, for selfish reasons. It's not about altruism, it's about altruism to himself. because we are all computations wherever they are. And any sufficiently, like I said, any intelligent deliberation process is going to lead you to conclude that. So this kind of leads to a paradox because we still exist. So if we still exist, we failed. And there's really nothing to talk about at that point because it feels kind of weird. It feels like I have free will and I could change the future and I could change people's minds and get this to happen. Maybe we could get some artificial general intelligence with the right utility function and it'll solve this. And yet the fact that I exist is already proof that it failed, that I failed, that this isn't going to happen. So it's kind of, it gives me the flavor of like Newcomb's paradox. And so yeah, it's a sad fact, but we failed.